How's it going, everybody? Mr. Holton here, and Dragon Age the Veilguard is approaching rapidly. There's barely a month left until the game launches, and so in this video I'm going to go through a list of things that you might need to know before you venture into the world of Dragon Age. And if you're a newcomer to the Dragon Age franchise, or you're looking to come back to the franchise after a long while of waiting, then this video is for you. First of all, for all of you newcomers, what is Dragon Age about? Well, Dragon Age is a fantasy RPG series developed by BioWare that focuses on deep narrative choices, character relationships, and combat set in the world of Thedas. The series allows players to explore complex storylines involving politics, magic, and ancient threats, where the player's decision shapes the fate of the world. Now, all of the previous Dragon Age games, that being Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, and Dragon Age Inquisition, all feature a mix of storytelling, large-scale battles, and moral complex choices. Now, where does Veilguard fit in the story? Now, as Veilguard is the latest entry in the Dragon Age franchise, it's going to be set after the events of Inquisition, and in this game players will once again explore the world of Thedas with a focus on the Tevinter Imperium, a nation known for its dark magic and powerful mages. You will play as a new protagonist this time, Rook, as you attempt to navigate rising tensions and ancient threats to unite the factions of Thedas. And speaking of which, all of the Dragon Age feature different protagonists in each game, so you never play as the same character in the sequel. Like, for example, in Dragon Age Origins, you play as the Grey Warden. In Dragon Age 2, you play as someone named Hawk, and in Dragon Age Inquisition, you play as the Inquisitor. And so Veilguard just simply continues this trend. Now, the main objective in Veilguard is that as Rook, your goal is to unite various factions in a fractured Thedas and face the threat posed by the Veil, a barrier separating the physical world from the Fade, a realm of spirits and demons. The Veil is weakening, and dark forces seek to take advantage of this, and I don't want to specifically say what dark forces these are, but one of the returning characters is Solus, who is returning as supposedly an antagonist. Maybe not, who's to say? Now, the Dragon Age franchise has always been known as a franchise that uses a system called real-time with pause, meaning that BioWare essentially mixed real-time combat with some strategic tactical combat. Players can pause the action to issue commands to their party or engage in fluid real-time combat. For example, in previous Dragon Age games, you were able to play as your various companions that you bring with you and swap between them if you wanted to, of course pausing the game to pick between various abilities to use when you're in combat, and a little bit of a similar style to something like Baldur's Gate 3 or other CRPG games. Veilguard, however, loses a lot of those elements. It still has the pause element of being able to pause the game during combat, but it's much more akin to Mass Effect 2 and 3 in the way that you control your companions. And speaking of which, you cannot control your companions directly in Veilguard. You can issue commands to them just like in Mass Effect, as I mentioned, but you cannot play as your companions as you can in previous Dragon Age games. Now, this has been a point of contention in the Dragon Age community. Some people hate it, some people are okay with it. I'm personally a little bummed about it, but we'll have to see when the game comes out, and I'm personally gonna hold back my opinions about it until I've played the full game. One thing to note is that Veilguard is going to be very mission-based and not open-world like in Inquisition. It's going to be focusing on tighter narrative experiences, but there will still be expansive areas that you can explore. Think something like God of War 2018 or God of War Ragnarok that had large or relatively large explorable zones that you could discover whenever you felt like it, and you could revisit places you had already been in the story. Now, just like in previous Dragon Age games, you'll be able to pick between 3 classes in Dragon Age the Veilguard. We have the Mage, we have the Rogue, and we have the Warrior, and each of these classes have their own distinct 3 subclasses. For example, mages can become evokers that focus on elemental magic. Then you can also become a Deathcaller, which is a type of necromancy type subclass. And thirdly, you have the Spellblade, that is a mix between melee and magic. Personally, I'll probably jump into a Warrior, probably as a Slayer, because I just love big two-handed weapons. That's just my kind of style. Now, speaking of customizing your character to your playstyle, you will be able to customize your character in Veilguard, and the character creation system in the game is supposedly very advanced. Now, some footage that is circling around there suggests that it's relatively close to something like Dragon's Dogma 2 in terms of character creation, but I'm not gonna lie, looking at it from some of the footage out there, it does seem to have some good potential. Now, you can play as 4 races in Veilguard. You can play as a regular filthy human like I will, or you can go as an elf, or you can be a Kunari, which are these big horn-headed dragon people. And of course, you also have dwarves. And just like in any other character creator, you can pick your gender, your physical appearance, as I mentioned, your background. And speaking of the background of your character, your choice of background will affect how some dialogue plays out in the game and some of the history you have with some characters. Now, the role of your companions in Veilguard is going to be really important, just like in any other BioWare game, both in terms of combat and the story. And you will have 7 companions to pick from, each with their own backstories, motivations, and personal quests that you can help them out with. As in previous Dragon Age games, you can form friendships, rivalries, and even romances with your companions. For example, Lace Harding returns from Inquisition as a companion, and each companion brings their unique skills to your party. For example, they all have their own special abilities that you will be able to unlock as you play through the game. They can become more aggressive during gameplay, and it's all pretty much dependent on what choices you take throughout the story. And speaking of romance, yes, you can romance each companion no matter what gender you are. So just like Baldur's Gate 3 did it, you don't have to specifically pick to play as a man or a woman. You can romance anyone, doesn't matter. Now, here comes a pretty huge point of contention that has been discussed pretty heavily recently, and that is the choices that affect the Veilguard. Now, while the Veilguard continues the story of Thedas, only 3 choices from previous games will carry over and influence the world, and these 3 choices are only from Inquisition, which was the last game. Again, this has been a point of frustration for some fans out there, for a lot of fans, I would say, as past Dragon Age titles heavily emphasized how decisions would ripple through future games. Now, I'm not going to say specifically which these choices are, because maybe you want to play through Inquisition before finding it out, but in case you were wondering, you don't necessarily have to play Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age 2 to understand Veilguard. But it might just be a good idea to read up on some of the lore. And if you want a crash course about the lore of Dragon Age, go ahead and check out this video that I made last week to get an inkling about the world. And now here comes a little bit of a spoiler, so in case you haven't played Inquisition and you don't want to be spoiled, you can skip over this point. I will put in a timestamp so you can just jump over it if you want to. But for anyone who's wondering who the hell is Solas, who is this egg, and why is he so important? Well, Solas is known as Fen Harel, which in Elvish in Dragon Age means the Dread Wolf. And Solas is a powerful elven mage and the central antagonist, it would seem. And in Inquisition, it was revealed that Solas seeks to destroy the Veil and restore the world to its ancient elven state, a plan that could have devastating consequences for all of Thedas. And Solas plays a major role in this new game, and players will likely have to face him as a key adversary. Maybe. And another major question that people have been asking is whether there will be multiplayer in Veilguard. No, there will not be any multiplayer. There's probably no multiplayer planned either, but you never know. And so we finally reached the end of the video. I think these are some of the most asked questions that people want to know the answers to. And so I hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. And if you did, remember to subscribe and like the video. I appreciate it very much. Have a great day. Mr. Alton, signing out.